Guys, we have Team Chaser coverage of the ongoing discussion about Ebola. It's here, it's in New York, thanks to Dr. Craig Spencer, who came back from West Africa. Sabeel, you are at 147th and Broadway. This is Dr. Spencer's apartment.
That's right, Bill. I'm in New York, corner of West 147th Street and Broadway in Harlem. And check out the scene right here. I'm going to turn here to the right, and I'm going to go around. So they're lined up all around this block, and they can all hear me right now as I'm doing my Skype. So basically, I'm right in front of the building of Craig Spencer. He's a 33-year-old doctor who tested positive for Ebola on Thursday. He's the first Ebola case in New York City. The block that I'm on right now has not been quarantined or blocked off.
How could this man come from West Africa, treating these people, and make it to 147th Street and Broadway with no testings, anything?
There's another controversy here. There are trained police officers who actually left Craig's apartment, where, as we know, he was very violently sick and contagious when he was brought to the hospital. And here you see exclusive video from the Daily Mail website showing two trained New York City police officers taking off their hazmat gloves and masks and just throwing them into a city trash can.
What the hell were they thinking?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're not too heavy on the NYPD here. This is the first documented case of Ebola in New York City. And New York Police Department is slated to take care of a whole rainbow of different problems. Ebola probably wasn't even on these people's radar. They just made a mistake putting these things away.
I want Jim McQueenie to weigh in. Jim, you're the host of New Jersey Now on My 9 that airs on Sundays. You've been around this business of politics, and I want to get to the mayor and the governor. But first, what's your take on this new buzzword of protocol?
I went into a hospital in Newark the other day, Newark Beth Israel, and I was encountered right away by a uniformed person who came up and asked me, do I have a fever? Have it in West Africa? And it was really an intimidating thing. They came forward. Although I do have to say, when they asked that question, I said no to everything. The guy was like standing back a little bit. Have you been to West Africa recently? And
Yeah, right.
I was afraid if I said yes, he would go, well, can you, go away? Because I don't think they really know what to do in many of these cases. Even though they intercepted me, that was a good thing.
Exactly. It's newsflash. The screenings at the airports are not working. This doctor went through that screening, clearly has been infected with Ebola, and health officials now are saying the feds are moving too slow. So NYPD doesn't know what to do. That's because above them, they don't know what to do.
Of course the screenings aren't working. You may not be showing signs of Ebola when you have the infection in your system, and then you go home, and then you have to trust people to, self-identify and self-diagose.
Put aside the issue of the police for 1 second here. I think, or the detectors in the airports here. We have a doctor here who is treating, who was there, who was in contact. Everyone's talking about quarantine of passengers and whatever from West Africa. Doctors, despite their goodness, are bringing sickness here to us on here. They should be quarantined when they come back from that geographic area. I'm sorry.
This front line should not have been in New York City. The front line is in West Africa, and I want to know why, when I saw Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio up there basically saying, well, New York is a busy place and we expected people to come. It was embarrassing. It's a lack of leadership, and these guys have put the burden on the nurses and the cops on the front line. It is outrageous. Sabeel, great job covering it. Keep chasing. We're going to check in with Bill. Bill Anderson, you're chasing the side of this story that really puts this in context for folks. Just how many people this doctor could have interacted with and come in contact with. What do you got?
Yeah, as people continue to have concerns about Ebola and whether or not it's possible for it to spread, we wanted to find out, when they say everything's okay and it's contained, what exactly that means. So the best way to do that was to actually retrace the steps. I started off at Dr. Craig Spencer's home in Harlem, walked down the block, took the path that he took while coming out that evening. I started off on the A train, a really crowded train, transferred to the L train, took the 1 train, and ultimately rode in an Uber car service to get back to his house.
When you were in the subway and on the street, do you sense anything different about New Yorkers, or is it business as usual? People just going about their way?
While I was on the subway, I actually shot video of a woman who had the mask tied across her face. Some people, as I walked along the path, were saying that they are concerned. They wanted to make sure it was contained. Others were saying enough is enough. Leave the man alone. Leave his family alone. They're taking care of it.
The doctor took an Uber car back to his house. You got into the car, or into a car. How close were you to the driver? Was the driver concerned? Was it part of the conversation? I mean, bring me into the car.
I mean, Uber cars are basically just cars. So you're sitting as close as you would to someone if you're sitting in their back seat. I mean, I could see where, again, if it's transmitted through contact, getting in and out of cars, putting your hands down on the seats, spending some time in the car could be a concern, but this particular driver was not worried about it.
How many people would you estimate you came in contact today in all your travels?
You may have contact with 1,000 people, direct contact maybe with 100, and by direct I mean people who touch the same pole, touch the same machines, touch things that you actually made physical contact with.
This disease is contracted through bodily fluids. Where did he go to the bathroom? What kind of drink glasses was he using in that bar when he's drinking a beer? How can you account for things like that? Those are the problems that we need to be looking at a little closer.
The sad and sorry truth of this is if Ebola victims start to number toward 100, I'm going to say arbitrary like that, you will see the world of the National Guard, the CDC, military involved, and that type of thing. But if it gets to 100, and this is what health authorities say, if it gets there, it's really bad, and the intervention is too late.
People need to be smart. If you know you came in contact with someone, go to the doctor yourself. The politicians will never be able to identify everyone who may have had contact.
But I want to just turn to the girlfriend of this doctor who was at home with him, who interacted with him. She's now under a quarantine. Allison, you chased that angle.
So it all started when an agitated woman showed up at the hospital and identified herself as Spencer's fiancée. That woman, 30-year-old Morgan Dixon. Morgan, since the incident, is being held for observation. The two currently live together and, according to their engagement notice, are set to marry next September in Detroit. According to her LinkedIn, she works at the HOPE program right there in New York. I tried calling multiple extensions, the workplace, no answer. She also, on that website, describes herself as an ultimate Frisbee player, a friend to coffee, and enjoys exploring the world with family and friends.
I wonder how that conversation is going to go. I mean, God forbid, I hope she doesn't have it, but can you imagine the two of them? Like, I wonder where her anger is going to be placed.
How much is this contact tracing going to cost the government?
We shouldn't have this burden put on the American people. Who is speaking for us right now to say, hey, it's not by accident that you've got thousands and thousands of cases in West Africa. Act on our behalf and defend American citizens against what is potentially a real crisis.
I can tell you who's speaking for America.
Who?
Fear.
Right now, you're right. In the absence of leadership in Washington and in these state capitals, I have to agree with you.